Hello, everyone. We are waiting for one of our guests to arrive, so kindly wait for 5 more minutes. We'll soon begin. Until then, I request you all to please put your phone on silent. Thank you. You can keep it here. Okay? Welcome to the Jewels of the Sahyadris, Lonavala. My name is Divyashri Rai, and on behalf of the Bombay Natural History Society, we are happy to receive all of you for the Salim Ali Award for Nature Conservation 2019 and the newly introduced J.C. Daniel Award for Young Women and Young Men. The past few days, I'm sure, have enriched us with fantastic scientific learnings. Well, I happened to come about this Native American proverb that said, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we bear from our children. Right? Well, please today we have a glorious opportunity to become aware of the silent works of nature, who have heart and soul in making this world a better place to coexist. This program is all about the preservation of the protectors of posterity. Moving forward with the program, I would now like to invite the dignitaries on the dais. May I request the President, Mr. Homi Khusro Khan, to please take a seat on the dais, our chief guest for the day. I now welcome our guest of honor, Ms. Patricia Sarita, CEO, BirdLife International. Lastly, the captain of the ship, Mr. Deepak Apte, Director, BNHS. Thank you. Homi Khusro Khan is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and he was the managing director. He has been associated with the Tata Group for a very long time. He has been the managing director of Tata Tea Limited and later became the MD of Tata Chemicals. Both companies became the world's second largest companies in tea and soda ash during his tenure by virtue of major international acquisitions which he managed. He has worked with various industry organizations and chambers of commerce. He was the president of the Organization of Pharmaceutical Producers of India and vice president of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He is presently the senior advisor, private equity to Tata Capital and a non-executive director on several boards. He is the chairman of Western Region of Employers Federation of India, chairman of United Way, Mumbai, vice president of the Indian Red Cross Society, and of course, the president of the Bombay Natural History Society. Welcome, sir. Next, we have with us Ms. Patricia Sarita, the Chief Executive Officer of BirdLife International. She's the first woman from a developing country to become CEO of an international conservation organization, which is the world's largest nature conservation partnership that brings together over 115 organizations worldwide to conserve the lovely birds. Prior to BirdLife, Ms. Sarita was the executive director of the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, a global multi-donor fund that enables the civil society to participate in and benefit from conserving some of the world's most critical ecosystems. Ms. Sarita also led the Conservation Stewards Program in Conservation International, implementing conservation agreements that provided economic incentives to local and indigenous communities in the developing countries in exchange for their commitment to protect biodiversity. I now request our director, Dr. Deepak Apte, to please welcome Ms. Patricia. So here. Lastly comes the introduction to the waterman of BNHS, Dr. Deepak Apte, who holds a doctorate in zoology with specialization in marine ecology. He received post-graduation degrees in the field of zoology from University of Mumbai, Integrated Coastal Zone Management from AIT Bangkok, and Marine Policy from Duke University, USA. Dr. Apte has been a recipient of the prestigious Green Oscar Whitley Award and the Whitley Continuation Award for his work on giant clams in Lakshadweep, Andaman, and Nicobar Islands. A well-received author, Dr. Deepak Apte has to his credit 5 books and 60 scientific papers in the field of coastal and marine biodiversity in the most prestigious journals. He's an accomplished underwater photographer with over 5,000 hours of diving experience. Deepak sir is also the executive committee member of SECON, Mangrove Foundation of Maharashtra, National Vulture Recovery Program, and several key committees of the Government of India. Currently, he is supervising large programs including Himalaya climate change and threatened species, wetlands and bird flyways, and coastal and marine program. 3 students are currently pursuing PhD under his supervision. His wildlife career spans over 3 decades and contributed greatly to develop several policies at national level. Welcome, sir. Well, now it is time to begin the much-awaited moment of the day. Conservation of nature is of paramount importance for the survival of humanity. At the same time, it is also important to recognize and honor the work that is being done by thousands of individuals and communities away from limelight. BNHS Salim Ali Award of Nature Conservation precisely tries to do this by felicitating pioneering hands-on work in wildlife research, conservation, and nature education. The idea behind giving awards in 3 categories is to recognize conservation work done at the global, national, and local levels. Felicitating and highlighting conservation action from different sections of the society will encourage others to carry out similar work to protect India's rich biodiversity and explore sustainable options. BNHS Salim Ali Award for Nature Conservation were instituted in 1996, and since then, 10 conservationists and local groups have been awarded across 3 categories: international, national, and community. The awardee is rewarded with a trophy, a citation, and a cash prize of Rs 1 lakh. Some of the past recipients of Salim Ali Awards for Nature Conservation are Mr. Peter Jackson, Dr. Nigel Collar, Professor Ian Newton, Dr. K. Ullas Karant, Mr. Romulus Whittaker, Dr. A.J.T. Johnson, to name a few. So now, let us begin with the Salim Ali Award for Nature Conservation 2019. I would request all the dignitaries to place their seats. Well, patience, perseverance, and politeness are the ladder through which success can be gained. One man from Liberia has rightly followed all the 3 principles to bring his home country on global platform with the most enlightened worldviews on nature conservation. This soccer star has kicked away all the hardships coming along his way to rise as an eco-warrior. We have a feast for your eyes, showing glimpses of the beautiful work done by Mr. Alexander Lewis Pele. Can we have the movie, please?
Alexander Pele, once goalkeeper for national football team for his country, Liberia, dedicated his life to forests and wildlife conservation. Commonly known as Alex Pele, his football career helped him a lot as soccer star to raise wildlife and forest conservation awareness in Liberia. Despite West Africa's once vast forest area, today Liberia is the only country left in the region with significant forest cover. Liberia is home for a couple of largest remaining undamaged blocks of Upper Guinean rainforest, which are full of incalculable biological values and vivid biodiversity. Initially, this wasn't easy for Alex Pele to head start the conservation movement. Though since 1970s, Alex Pele has been a major motive of Liberia's forest preservation efforts. In spite of civil war and his own exile from the country for several years, he sustained his wildlife conservation movement from abroad for protecting Liberia's forest and wildlife interests. Alex Pele started with joining Department of District Forest Officer and was assigned to species-rich diversified forest at Grabo National Forest in southeastern Liberia. Soon he was selected for training at a College of African Wildlife Management, Mweka, Tanzania. On return, Alex joined Forestry Development Authority (FDA) in 1976. He organized and led the section for wildlife and national parks. National Geographic Society and the Zoological Society of San Diego sponsored Alex Peel and Philip Robinson to conduct park viability study at Sapo Forests. In collaboration with the World Wildlife Fund (WWF) and the World Conservation Union (IUCN), he organized the creation of Sapo National Park, Liberia's first and only national park around 1981 and 1982. Liberia's forests have many endemic species, and many more were nearly on the extinct level. Notable animal species include the only remaining viable populations of the pygmy hippopotamus, the zebra duiker, and the Liberian mongoose. Most of the Liberia's forests have never been surveyed by scientists earlier. The majority of conservation work has been not possible without the work of Alexander Peel. He founded the Society of the Conservation of Nature of Liberia (SCNL) in 1986, which is a non-governmental, non-political and non-profit conservation organization which seeks to promote the wise use of nature and natural resources to ensure a better environment. Alexander Peel is awarded with Goldman Prize in 2000, Whitley Award in 2001 and Commander Star of Africa in 2009.
I now request our President, Mr. Homi Khusro Khan, to please come on the stage to present the award. Can we hear a big round of applause to Mr. Alexander Lewis Peel, the soccer star of Liberia. The Salim Ali Award for Nature Conservation International goes to Mr. Alexander Lewis Peel. Alexander Lewis Peel has been working to protect and preserve the biodiversity and natural heritage of his home country, Liberia, for decades, despite 2 civil wars halting almost all nature conservation activities in Liberia. A former goalie for the Liberian national soccer team, he has used his public image as a soccer star to the advantage of the conservation movement. He helped create Sapo National Park, Liberia's first national park, and founded the country's first environmental NGO, Society for the Conservation of Nature of Liberia, in 1986. It is due to the efforts of individuals like Alexander Peel that Liberia now has 5 wetlands of international importance designated under the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands, 1 endemic bird area, and 9 important bird areas across the country. Mount Nimba was recently designated an Alliance for Zero Extinction Site. The Upper Guinea Rivers and Streams WWF Global 200 site is recognized as critical to freshwater conservation. Liberia has ratified the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals. In all these activities, Peel has made stellar contributions to bring his home country on board at global platforms with the most enlightened worldviews. The Salim Ali International Award for Nature Conservation for 2019 is awarded to Alexander Lewis Peel to recognize his unstinted efforts to sustain the conservation movement in Liberia. We believe that in the coming years, his wildlife preservation efforts will fructify and restore the national glory of his motherland. That was the written citation for Mr. Peel. I would now request Mr. Field to share a few words here.
Wow. Indeed, this is very, very great. I did not expect this. This is a big surprise. However, the work is still not completed, and I have been moved by this honor. It really surprised me. I didn't expect this. However, we, in our capacity as humans, must sustain this earth for our future generations and for the benefits of others to come and enjoy. I am greatly excited and like to say big thank you to BNHS for this award, and I hope that this will stimulate others to follow me. As a matter of fact, when I first started this program, after my college graduation, I did forestry. It was through my forestry profession that I got attracted to the wildlife in the area in which I was assigned in eastern Liberia, in the Grebo National Forest at the time that was teeming with a lot of species. Liberia has a diverse species diversity all over the country, and they were being used mainly for food, bushmeat. They were hunted, and then I approached the authority of the Forestry Development Authority to ask them, what could we do, or could we do something to sustain the survival of these species, because they were not there just for eating. They were there for other purposes. And this is how come I got interested. And I was I was selected to do a postgraduate program at Mweka in Tanzania, the then um, College of College of African Wildlife Management. Upon my completion of the study there, my first task was to build a staff, to train them, and then we had to go out to get assistance from international donors to help us put a team and experts together to do a survey for the country. And then through that, the IUCN World Wildlife Fund, African Wildlife Foundation, and many others joined our efforts, and we became what was known our first real conservation program. But that did not last for long. It was after we had established ourselves, then the Civil War came, which drove me out of the country and my family. So I took refuge in the United States. But I did not just sit in the United States. I sat there and planned with some of my friends, Dr. Philip Robinson, Reg Hoyt, Richard Nisbet, and others, even from Holland, Hang Dope, and many others, helped me for us to establish ourselves, to establish also a local and non-governmental organization, which is the Society for the Conservation of Nature, to involve the public participation in our efforts, because we knew very well that with all the public, we wouldn't have gotten the kind of support, more support to sustain the resources that we were hoping to protect. And it was through that measure that we were able to sustain some of the forest areas and establish a program that is now very, I won't say powerful, but it's still available and still doing well in Liberia. The Society for the Conservation of Nature is very active, despite the situation, the problems with and the government and other institutions. But SCNL is doing well. And I did not expect to be nominated for this award. When I was told about it, I asked, how did my name get here? But then something came to me and I said, well, you have RSBP, You have Wildlife International and other people you work with. So maybe someone may have recommended you. And hopefully, I think that happened. So I'm very grateful for this recognition. And I know it will go a long way to encourage other people to follow my footsteps. And I pray and hope that this honor will inspire the government of Liberia to do more for our protected areas. One thing I'd like to say here is that during my tenure at the FDA, I made contacts, and when I retired, I joined Conservancy International, where we got support for us to establish a network of protected areas in Liberia, which we have established and is still working hard to include other diverse areas in the network system. And it's doing well, but now the economy of the country is so poor because of the leadership. So we are having problems. And hopefully that problem will soon go away. And we pray that it happens because we have a lot to do. And we are not here for long. It's good that we can do what we can do and leave it with others to follow. So I thank the leadership and the authority of BNHS for this honor, and I pray and hope that we can continue working together to do more for other areas that need help and protection. I thank you very much, and God bless all.
Thank you, Mr. Pele, for putting Liberia on the global map. Older than the Himalaya mountains, the mountain chain of the Western Ghats influenced the Indian monsoon weather pattern. A person who has always voiced his opinion and played an active role in national policy making and chaired the hotspot of biological diversity, Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel, is none other than Professor Madhav Gadgir. Can we have the movie, please?
Always encouraged by Mother Nature, mankind learned to raise with it. Nature has always facilitated us to cultivate, to resource and to live. Mother Nature fulfilled our existence with all her biodiversities and assets. She has nourished us for food, for survival and for mankind. But now nature has changed throughout the years. It has gained a few and lost a lot down the years. Life teaches us through a range of experiences, truly learning for the centuries. Need of saving our nature and natural resources is call of the time. Sri Madhav Gadgil, a persona with green vision as an ecologist, writer, and columnist, is one of the nature conservers. Madhav Gadgil was an active sportsman during his college years, held the Maharashtra State Junior and Pune University high jump records in 1959 and 1961 respectively. He has also represented Pune University at the All India University Athletic Meet. Being on toes for nature has emerged from his early college years and childhood. His father was a passionate bird watcher, member of the BNHS, and Dr. Salim Ali's friend and colleague. As a schoolboy, Sri Madhav Gadgil came in contact with Dr. Salim Ali, and his association with Dr. Salim Ali continued throughout the life. Sri Madhav Gadgil has pioneered the scientific study of sacred groves and pleaded for their conservation in countless ways. This effort concluded in his association with the declaration of several new sacred groves in community forest resource areas assigned to village communities of Gadchiroli and Chandrapur districts in Maharashtra. He undertook the first ever vigilant census of elephant populations in India, which led to set Project Elephant in India. One of the major contributions of Sri Madhav Gadgil is his effort towards the preservation of ecology and Biodiversity in India. As the chairman of the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel WGEEP, which later came to be known as the Gadgil Commission, he submitted a report in 2011 marking around 64% of the Western Ghat region as ecologically sensitive area. He is the former member of the Scientific Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India as the head of the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel WGEEP. Recipient of Volvo Environment Prize and the Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement, Shri Madhav Gadgil is also awarded with the fourth highest civilian award of the Padma Shri in 1981 and followed with the third highest award of the Padma Bhushan in 2006 by Government of India.
Wow. That was a beautiful vision to watch about the legendary man, Mr. Madhav Gadgil. I would now request our president, Mr. Homi, to please come on the dais to present the award. The Salim Ali Award for Nature Conservation National goes to Professor Madhav Gadgil. I would now like to read out the citation for you. Professor Madhav Gadgil is an ecologist and evolutionary biologist and the founder of the Center for Ecological Sciences at the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. A former member of several national councils like the Scientific Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India and National Advisory Council, he chaired the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel, known as the Gadgil Commission, and is a member of UNESCO's Committee on Biosphere Reserves. He helped to develop guidelines for the selection of biosphere reserves, the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve being India's first such reserve. As a member of the committee set up to examine the proposal for the Silent Valley Hydroelectric Project in Kerala, he undertook the first ever careful census of elephant populations in India, which led to the initiation of Project Elephant. Madhav Gadgil has played an active role in national policy making. He is credited with the introduction of quantitative investigations of ecology and animal behavior in India, with humans constituting a vital part of ecosystem. He has conducted extensive researches in the areas of population biology, conservation biology, human ecology, and ecological history, and has published over 250 scientific articles in various journals and magazines. His doctoral thesis is reputed to be a citation classic. Professor Gadgil has worked closely with educational institutions, NGOs, and local communities in his nature conservation-related efforts. His network of 45 colleges and NGOs from several Indian states to develop People's Biodiversity Registers have become the model for the People's Biodiversity Registers in India's Biological Diversity Act 2002. The Salim Ali National Award for Nature Conservation for 2019 is awarded to Madhav Gadgil to recognize his stalwart contribution towards the preservation of India's ecology. His extensive research and fieldwork has laid the building blocks to secure the foundation of nature conservation in India, and he continues to inspire the coming generation to follow his path. May I now request the young at heart, Professor Madhav Gadgil, to please give us a few words.
Thank you so much. It's a great privilege to be honored in the name of Salim Ali by Bombay Natural History Society. I have been a member of the society. My father, in fact, had been a member since 1930s. Then when I turned 21 in 1963, he said, I will now gift you a life membership to the Bombay Natural History Society. So since 63, I have been a member. But much before that, I was reading, my father had very nice bound volumes of all the journals, and reading and becoming interested more and more in natural history, wildlife. And of course, Dr. Salim Ali was my guru and mentor. As mentioned, when I was maybe 11 years old, my father was, well, in 1942, I guess, Salim Ali published his Book of Indian Birds, and I was born in that year, and my father had procured a copy in 42. So from a very young age, I was looking at the bird pictures, and he was very fond himself of bird watching. As I said, he had been member, and he had got to know Salim Ali much earlier. With him, I once noticed that this green bee-eater, it has a pin feather sticking out of its tail, otherwise square-cut tail, but it was missing. I know we had lots of green beaters around our house in Pune, and I asked my father, why is it? Is it a different species, or what's the reason why suddenly you have all these green beaters without that feather? He said, well, he doesn't know, why don't you write to Salim Ali? So I wrote a letter to him. He promptly replied. I was amazed within 3 days in his own long, very nice handwriting, and explained that the green beetles, like most birds, molt once a year, and after the molt for a few weeks, you won't see this feather. So I was all the more interested what was happening, and Salim Ali that time used to come to Pune regularly to go to Parvati Hills to study the Baya-weaver bird breeding there. So I went and met him there, and as I said, from that time in my high school days, I was in touch with him. Then 2 years I did a Master of Science in Zoology in Institute of Science, which is just next to Hornbill House in Mumbai. So for those 2 years, I used to visit him very frequently, and we became, of course, very good friends. I was wondering for a while whether I should do a PhD with him. But then I had some further interest. I had become very interested in the sort of modern evolutionary theory, ecological theory, quantitative data, how to handle it. And then Dr. Salim Ali, great scientist he was quite innocent of such things. So I managed to get admitted to Harvard University, where computers were just, all over the world, the computers were just beginning to be applied to scientific work at that time in 65. I became fascinated. I became a very good programmer, and I did a PhD thesis, mathematical modeling using computer simulations or in population biology. Anyway, so I got to know this field very well. So when I returned back in 71, I thought I had something to contribute to my guru. So I went to BNHS and I said, well, now there are all these new possibilities. And Salim Ali was very interested, and he said, let's take all this bird ringing data we have got, and maybe we can have it computerized and analyzed. So he came down. I was at that time in Pune. So he came down to Pune and looked at computer facilities. We began some work, though that did not go very far. Later, we did work together on analyzing a lot of quantitative data that he had with him in his sort of vast storage of observations, and then some I had made on communal roosting in birds. And in fact, we published also some scientific papers together. Anyway, at that time, I had also become interested in the sacred groves, because Maharashtra Western Ghats, they had been extensively deforested by 71. And I noticed, along with my botanist colleague, Dr. Vartak, my senior in fact, botany guru, that sacred grounds preserved on grounds of whatever beliefs or maybe something more by local communities were the only remnants of genuine primeval natural vegetation of Western Ghats. So I started Vartakadai, we decided to study sacred grounds. Mehendale, who was a senior forest official, had been a classmate of Vartak. So he gave with us a forest guard to take us around the hills of Velle, that is in the catchment area of Panshet Dam. It had no communication at all except you go by motor launch and then walk around in the hills. So Vartakadai spent on this initial trip some 8 days walking around and camping at various villages. And then I saw, of course, we were fascinated, we saw these sacred grounds, but I also began to understand what was going on ground. So this forest guard would come with us, take us to the village. We had mapped all those where we wanted to go, and then disappear. Okay. So he will appear next morning. I said, what? He did not mention anything more or less, but I asked the villagers, what does he do? Oh, they said he goes around collecting bribes from here and there, and then evenings, some village he asks for a chicken and some country brewed, that time it was illegal still, liquor, and has a nice dinner and drinks and sleeps. And next morning, he is that way quite good at his work. He comes back and takes you to the next stop. All right. So then I came back and I told Salim Ali that many stories, including, of course, of the sacred grounds we saw. He had a great sense of humor. And he said, Madhav, that's how bureaucracy is. Let me tell you a story. You know, in what is doodh? We have a saying, 1 part milk and 3 parts pani is known as doodh in Hindustani. So the job, he said, of a milk inspector is a very coveted job. Now there was this young man who had landed a job as a milk inspector. And his father started looking for a bride for him. And naturally the father of the prospective bride asked, what is his salary? So the prospective bridegroom's father said, salary is so-so, but the income is good. So I decided that, fine, I had studied botany and zoology and then computer programming and quantitative analysis of data, but I must also supplement it by a realistic understanding of the social, economic, political system in which all this operates, which I think is one thing which I have done, which is perhaps been a strength of my work. Secondly, I was not interested just in birds and so on, I was very interested in the people also. So, in fact, Iravati Karve, who was one of the most distinguished sociologists, anthropologists of the country in those days, till I think she passed away sometime during 60s, but for that whole period she was a pioneer in this field. She had been our neighbor. And she was also very interested in bird watching like my father. And she was full of stories about her field work and her, interest in working with people. And now we are hearing of tens of thousands of crores worth research grants. She did some very pioneering work on kinship systems and kinship terminologies of Maharashtra. And all that she spent was, she would purchase a ticket on some public bus for a journey, let's say from Pune to Nandurbar or some such a long journey, sit next to various people, she was very good at talking to people, very good anthropologist, get to know who they were and what communities they belonged to, and chat about then what do you call uncle's father and father's whatever, and various kinship and how they work and whom would you agree to marry and whom you won't. At the end, she did this work based entirely on expenses were buying tickets on the bus and maybe eating here and there in some simple places. So I had, as I said, I was in a sense inspired by her also. So wherever I did, and since 71, I have done a lot of fieldwork till today. I have never spent money on staying in any rest houses or lodges or hotels. I have always stayed with people. I have in Masur, Agadashini is a west-flowing river in Karnataka. In the estuary of Agadashini is this place Masur, which had a very nice mangroves, and it's a beautiful island. But again, simple community, no modern facilities, no piped water supply, no kind of amenities. In 85, there were the Jila Panchayat elections, and the democratic decentralization process had started at that time. And Abdul Nazir Saab, who was the Panchayat minister, I was fairly young, but I got to know all these people because Murarrao Ghorpade, who was the finance minister, was very fond of wildlife photography. And I was, as was mentioned, started counting elephants. He became a friend of mine. So through him, I knew all these people. So Abdul Nazir Saab said, now that we have this local level government, you must work with them. So I worked for many, many years in Masur. Through the entire period, I will sleep in an attic on the floor in the primary teacher's house there. And that's how I have also learnt a lot about what happens at the ground, which I think both a realistic understanding of the social, economic, administrative system and this long experience of exactly what is going on at the ground level have helped me. And the Western Ghat Ecology Expert Panel was mentioned. It is interesting that after the report came out in 2011, we submitted, the government suppressed it for one whole year with no success because under Right to Information Act, finally they had to relieve it. And then it was based on such understanding at the ground level, and one of the maxims I have followed is Alfred North Whitehead's maxim. Alfred North Whitehead was a great mathematician, philosopher anyway. He also wrote books for general public. So in high school, I read his book called Science and the Modern World. And it has this to say: science anchors itself on the hard bedrock of objective facts, however unpalatable they may be. So the report had objective facts. Nobody could show a single fact was wrong. But they were unpalatable, because in that I had quoted in detail a letter from citizens of Mahabaleshwar that we have an ecologically sensitive zone here. Only difference we see is that before we could dig a well, now that it's ESZ and we must preserve the groundwater, all of us are forced to pay a bribe of 25,000 rupees before we dig a well. Wells are being dug as before. And such things were in the report, so naturally it was very unpopular. And initially there were all sorts of attempts to distort it and so on. But slowly the kind of message which was in no way against the people began to seep through. And now, especially in Kerala, with last 2 years disastrous floods, people actually noted that where we had said are areas which must be protected as ecologically sensitive, they were primarily areas of very steep slope, high rainfall, where there was intact natural vegetation of sufficient extent. So in 2011, we had suggested that last bits of natural vegetation must be maintained in these sensitive areas. This was rejected. There are a lot of other kinds of interests. So there had been significant destruction of this natural vegetation all along, and therefore, where last year and especially this year, there were huge landslides and large-scale deaths, they occurred exactly where we had said the forest natural habitat must be preserved and where it was destroyed. So people have suddenly started waking up, and there is enough pressure so that the Chief Minister of Kerala also, who till these floods and landslides a few months ago had been saying that this is a awful report and all sorts of nasty things about our report, suddenly is saying, no, we must examine what is in it. So it is a long journey. Anyway, as I said, I am grateful to Bombay Natural History Society and of course giving me an award of Salim Ali. Thank you so much.
Well, it's a happy moment for me personally because I handle the membership department and meeting life members like you is always a happy time. Next, we are going to take you to the land of festivals, Nagaland. Here, two men have been doing some remarkable work in awakening and enlightening community sentiments, especially the youth. Their mantra is, shoot with camera, not with gun. So now, let us show you some of the shoots about the heroes of Nagaland, Suseki and Limthure. Can we have the movie, please?
In the remote areas of Northeast, in the Fakim village, hunting of wildlife and jhum cultivation practice is causing rapid deforestation and degradation of the environment. In pursuit of inculcating pride in the youth of Nagaland towards the natural heritage and the value of conservation for a more sustainable and equitable future for themselves, Suseki and Limthure started the Bhutan Glory Eco Club to include the youth in conservation with the mission, shoot but with camera, not gun. Their work has helped bring more focus to Fakim Wildlife Sanctuary, which boasts of the endemic butterfly species, Bhutan Glory. Along with community mobilization, awareness education and helping the forest department, they are expanding their domain to livelihood generation through horticulture and animal husbandry. They have played a very important role in all major activities of the forest department like complete LED village program, where Fakim village became the first complete LED village in Nagaland. As local role models and grassroots leaders, Suseki and Limthure continue to involve more and more youth in conservation through their persistence and commitment. With the focus of banning hunting, involving youth in conservation and biodiversity documentation, this duo has transformed community sentiments towards conservation. Fellows of Green Hub, a youth and community-based video documentation center, they are focused on documenting community efforts to protect environment, wildlife and biodiversity of Northeast India. Both of them are proficient photographers and videographers now, and their biodiversity interests and efforts have seen this duo document 44 species of birds and 101 species of butterflies in Fakim alone. Their photographs are published in a book, Wildlife of Fakim, which has helped to create awareness about region's biodiversity amongst locals and local communities. Bhutan Glory Eco Club is awarded with the Nature Conservancy Award for shifting the mindset of the youth of Nagaland through awareness and education, from a hunting culture to connecting to nature and preserving our natural heritage.
Well, that was a beautiful movie from one of the remotest corners of India. Now, I request our president to please come on the dais to present the award to Suseki and Limthuri from Nagaland. The Salim Ali Community Award for Nature Conservation 2019 goes to Suseki and Limthuri. Thank you. Well, the citation reads, Suseki and Limthuri of the Yimchungur tribe from Fakam village in Nagaland's Kipre district have been making sincere efforts to create awareness about nature conservation among the local community in their area. They run the Bhutan Glory Eco Club in the fringe villages of Fakam Wildlife Sanctuary and have carried out some commendable work despite many hurdles and lack of monetary support. Their slogan is stress on the importance of conservation for a more sustainable future and encourage nature photography. Shoot with camera, not with gun. The Eco Club, under their supervision, has conducted reforestation drives on community lands and is now exploring sustainable livelihoods in horticulture and animal husbandry to reduce dependence on their traditional shifting cultivation, which is now unsustainable and leads to widespread biodiversity loss. With a focus on banning hunting, involving youth in conservation and biodiversity documentation, they have transformed community sentiments towards conservation and steered the youth in their tribe towards sustainable alternatives. Grassroots level conservationists like this duo, spread across the length and width of our country, have been making little known but significant contributions and have kept the flame of conservation glowing, and along with it, the hopes of millions for whom this blue planet is a home. The Salim Ali Community Award for Nature Conservation for 2019 is awarded to Suseki and Limthuri to recognize their outstanding and relentless efforts to create conservation awareness among the local community in Nagaland. We hope that this outstanding example of community conservation from one of the most beautiful and remote corners of India inspires many such endeavors across the country in the coming years. I now invite Suseki and Limthuri to please speak few words.
Good afternoon, one and all. Respected host of today's program, most respected director, Bombay Nature History Conservation Society, and all who are present here in this program. I don't anticipate to get this award, but today I'm very glad to receive this award. It is not only my hard work or dedication, but it is a community work and cooperation with the community of the villages. Today, I cannot able to say I will not able to say about the conservation in some parts of India, whether it might face many more challenges or no. But when it comes to Nagaland, it is very difficult to work on conservation because many of the forest land is owned by the community and individual. And when we talk about the conservation, the community or the individuals, they don't accept because they are expert hunters. They depend on hunting as a sources of food. So many more challenges has been facing in Nagaland, such as in the remote areas, such as the eastern part of Nagaland. And around just towns and cities, it might understand the importance of wildlife and wildlife conservation, but like me, whoever stay in rural areas, they don't have idea about these things. So, say, when we come to know that it is important to save the wildlife, so we start Eco Club. So, I have seen that Bata Dions noted that we will protect the only what we love. We will love what we understand. We will understand what we thought, right? So we start Eco Club. So I have a small pictures, that's a PowerPoint. That is a small pictures which we work in that remote area. That say, okay. Is it working? Yeah. Yeah. This is my native village called Fagim village, which is the very remote area of Nagaland. It touches the Indo-Myanmar in the east. Which one? It's not working. Yeah, this is our club members. The program offers classroom activities such as interaction about the conservation, how we have to do and what we have to do. And we play games relevant to the conservation. We will arrange some of the chairs and running around. If we remove, say like removing the chair, that is, we will explain that if we cut on some parts of the forest, then it will not be a place for to stay the wildlife. So it is removing one by one and then play the games for to understand the the wildlife. And next. Yeah, the club members not only in work in classroom activities, but also which we have survey where we have been. We used to draw the map, the surrounding areas. We are not going inside in the deep forest because we don't have the first aid if we get something. So we will survey only. We are used to survey only the surrounding areas. So the surrounding area where we win, we used to map which species we have found and which area we have covered. Next. This not working. Yeah, in our club, all the members are youth only. We hope that all the Naga people used to hunt the wildlife. So we used to talk to the youth that it is not good, it is not so good to shoot with the gun, but with the camera, which we are trying to document the wildlife and which we can show to the next generation. And if the beauty of the Mother Nature, if we look at seriously, they might think that it is beautiful to save. So we start teaching them how to handle the cameras and how to use the binoculars. Next. Yes, in the field, whichever just near to the village, whoever, not only the club members, but whoever interested to go for field trip to watch the to watch the birds or any wildlife, they are allowed us to come enjoy and work in the field. Next. Yeah, in the field note making is very important. That the club members used to write down all the field notes, and while coming back, they will come and explain in our home dialect, that is in our own language, which they can translate as a local which species or how the forest is. They used to explain in our home dialect. Next. Yeah, the documentation has been happened because these are the photographs of the Bhutan Glory Eco Club. It is taken. These kinds of picture has been taken by only that small digital cameras, and they are very interested to capture mostly butterflies, and they want to see the colorful of the nature. Next. We are documenting whatever the biodiversity is present in our area. We are trying to, not in a scientific name, but just a local name. We are trying to write on by themselves and show it to the school childrens, which they can able to learn easily. Next. Most of the hunters, they used to hunt the wildlife or the birds, whichever they found, but just on the way, whenever they found the laying egg, they used to eat up because they get tired. So to get a little support, they used to pick out that laying egg also. So we used to explain that this is the laying egg, say one or two pieces of laying egg. If we pick out that, we are killing the birds or the animals. So we are trying to encourage them, to make them understand how we should have to generate and how we should have to save the wildlife, because it is important for us. Say we are trying to explain with these photographs to the hunters. Next. Yeah, in Nagaland, you have seen in movie that in hilly area, in our village, most of the people, or all the people, they don't cultivate in paddy fields, but only the zoom field, the shifting cultivation is happening, and then the forest land is destroying every year. So we are encouraging to the farmers that we should have to replant more trees, which it will give more fertile to the soil, in which we can cultivate more crops. And not only that, it is habitat for the wildlife also. So we start with the students and youths for replantation. We are encouraging not only in the field, but inside the forest. The bearing fruit trees also we used to plant inside the forest also. Next. Yeah, most of the people, they don't understand about the conservation. So after that, the Bhutan Glory Eco Club members also come to know that it is important, and they started changing their mindset, and they are interested to work and observe the wildlife and beautiful butterflies. And before, it is the youths, mostly in a spare time or in their free time, they used to play game with the butterflies. They used to kill the butterflies, and they will arrange like, I have killed such and such, and just like a game type, and in their free time. So, and right after joining in Bhutan Glory Eco Club, they didn't kill the butterflies, and the hunters, they have 13 to 14 members from our club. They said that they will not the egg from the nest. And before we start Eco Club, whatever the rules and regulation is set up by the village council, they didn't obey the rules and regulations because the villagers, the village council, they can't able to explain about the importance of wildlife. So after that establish of the Bhutan Glory Eco Club, only they follow the rules and regulation. What the council, what the village council, what the village leaders had already set the rules and regulation, and they follow whatever the information has been given by the village council. With regard to hunting, most of the hunters, they used to say that it is just sources of meat, but when we are trying to explain about all these things, they said that they will start save the wildlife, and after that a seasonal ban, say like in the breeding season or some month which the village council has been already set the rules and regulation, they said that okay, we will follow that, and the hunters become decreasing. Next. This is we thought that we have selected youth members, say 18 youth members from our village. We hope that one day the youth will understand the importance of wildlife, and they will influence in the society, and not only in our village, but outside the fringe area of Phagim Wildlife Sanctuary. They will start influence in the society. They will see the importance of wildlife. We hope that one day the Bhutan Glory Eco Club will bring a decision-making leader, well-researched in aid of wildlife conservation, not only in our village, but as well as the state of Nagaland. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. We all know actions speak louder than words, and I'm sure the actions done in Nagaland has reached not only India, but other parts of the world today. Moving forward, starting this year, we have instituted the J.C. Daniel Conservation Leader Award in the Young Women and Young Men categories. Who is J.C. Daniel? His dedication to encourage and to promote youngsters in the field of conservation is a quality rare to find today. BNHS has therefore decided to constitute 2 awards, J.C. Daniel Conservation Leader Award for Young Men and Young Women from 2019 to celebrate the legacy of J.C. in nature conservation. These awards will be presented biannually, like the Salim Ali Awards for Nature Conservation. These awards consist of a trophy, a citation, and cash prize of Rs 75,000. We hope that the young minds that are chosen for this award will help to further the legacy to our beloved J.C. Daniel. And the time is here to witness the beauty of amalgamation of both the old and young conservationists. Well, frogs mean the onset of monsoon to all of us, but it has been quite a journey for one lady, Miss Sonali Garg. She has carried out extensive studies on frogs in the Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, and her research has yielded a significant body of primary data, which has conservation implications for nearly half of the known Western Ghats frogs and 1/3 of the known Indian frogs. Without further ado, let us put our boots and plunge into the puddles and marshes to see the extensive work done by Ms. Sonali Garg. Can we have the movie, please?
As a child, Sonali was merely a child next door, where her encounters with nature and wildlife were limited to occasional touristic visits to nearby hill stations and nature reserves. Wildlife for her till then was about large and fascinating forest-dwelling animals, far away from my everyday world. For Sonali, Frogs back then were common toads and grey or brown, slimy animals inhabiting fields, ponds, and ditches during rains. Sonali later on grew up with a deep interest but hardly any exposure to nature and any wildlife till then. As her inclination of interests, she pursued zoology as major subject in graduate program and environmental studies in postgraduate level. During these years, Sonali had opportunities of volunteering experiences with several organizations, environment workshops, conferences and campaigns, field exposure and training programs, and interactions with influential naturalists, environmentalists, and wildlife experts. While pursuing postgraduate studies, she encountered with Professor S.D. Biju, popularly known as Frogman of India. Soon she started to follow his work, research papers, and research contributions with more interest. Sonali approached him and her research interests bagged the opportunity of doing a master dissertation in his lab and worked closely with him. This became the foundation of her scientific research on amphibians. She spent weeks and months in the field expedition across the Western Ghats, surveying different habitats and regions, studying several frog species, learning from her mentor, alongside other experiments in local communities. In order to understand and define frog species, Sonali went through an endless study of species in museums, DNA sequences, which led her to further research interests in taxonomy, systematics, molecular phylogeny, evolution, biogeography, and conservation. As an amphibian researcher and field biologist, Sonali had opportunity to stride the lesser taken path, dig out scientific evidence, bridge the knowledge gaps, and actively contribute towards conservation. Sonali's comprehensive work on the Western Ghats endemic family Ranixaladae, comprising of genus Indrana and Valkerna, resulted in the discovery and description of the two new species, Garg and Biju 2016 in PLOS 1. The endemic night frog genus Nyctibactratus held more surprises as her research showed a high diversity of minuscule forms, which led to the discovery and description of 7 new night frog species, including some of the smallest known Indian frogs, many of which face anthropogenic threats in their habitats in the southern Western Ghats. As an amphibian researcher and field biologist, Sonali had an opportunity to actively contribute towards conservation prioritization efforts and undertaking several journeys of understanding and being close to nature.
Thank you. I now request our president to please come on the dais. And the J.C. Daniel Conservation Leader Award for Young Women for the first time in 2019 goes to Ms. Sonali Garg. Sonali Garg, a systematist and researcher, has been studying Indian frogs for nearly a decade. Her early interests in wildlife exploration, biodiversity conservation, and environment protection evolved into a passion for documenting amphibians and understanding the diversification and distribution patterns, which led her to undertake extensive studies on the frogs of the Western Ghats and Sri Lanka. She has carried out field expeditions across the Indian subcontinent and neighboring Southeast Asian regions and formally described 40 new species and 2 genera of frogs, along with team members and collaborators. Her research has yielded a significant body of primary data, which has conservation implications for nearly half of the known Western Ghat frogs and 1/3 of all known Indian frogs. She addresses problems of amphibian taxonomy using several integrative approaches, primarily morphological and molecular, but also bioacoustics, internal anatomy, reproductive biology, and natural history. She has to her credit 18 scientific publications, including comprehensive systematic revisions in reputed peer-reviewed international journals. She has been a key scientific associate of the nationwide conservation initiative, Lost Amphibians of India, and the Western Ghats network of protected areas for threatened amphibians. She continues to delve into broader questions surrounding the systematics, phylogenetic relationships, evolution, biogeography, and conservation of South Asian and Southeast Asian frogs as a postdoctoral research associate with Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, Government of India, at the Systematics Lab, University of Delhi. The J.C. Daniel Conservation Award for Young Women for 2019 is awarded to Sonali Garg to recognize her dedication and achievements as a systematist. We hope that her work will inspire a generation of young researchers and systematists. Thank you. I now request Sonali to please share her thoughts.
So I'm short. I decided to become a little tall. Thank you, BNHS, for giving me this wonderful privilege of accepting the first J.C. Daniel Conservation Leader Award. Awards for work on large and charismatic animals are common, so I'm indeed humbled that the first J.C. Daniel Award is being conferred for a smaller form of life. J.C. Daniel himself championed the cause of wildlife conservation for animals right from large mammals, birds to reptiles and amphibians. He made valuable documentations through his voluminous work on the amphibians of the Western Ghats, as well as amphibians and reptiles at large of India. This award is all the more special for me because I come from a lab that recognized and honored JC's contribution to Indian wildlife research, particularly herpetofauna, by naming a new species of frog after him in 2011. Daniel's night frog was described by Professor S.D. Biju way back in 2011 when I was only beginning to understand frogs. I was only learning. So thank you really for such a great honor. I'm also privileged to receive this in a wonderful gathering of wildlife lovers, eminent scientists, conservation leaders, and people who are really role models to me. I think this is not an award. This is a recognition for the frogs. I think this is our way of letting them know that they are being heard. And this is our commitment that we care. When I was growing up, like many, my concept or my understanding of frogs was limited to gray, brown, slimy creatures that you would come up just during the rains. But 10 years before, everything changed for me. I fell in love, but with frogs. And then I undertook a journey of a lifetime with them. I consider it a blessing enough that I've got to know closely some of the most beautiful, ancient, and unique frogs on Earth. I've been fortunate to discover species previously unknown to science, to study and document such a wide array of frogs, and to contribute crucial scientific data for their conservation. But today I also have the honor of accepting this award on their behalf. Frogs don't speak our language, but they communicate with each other in some of the most spectacular ways known in the biological world. Their diversity is remarkable, and their life histories are some of nature's best-kept secrets. 350 million years ago, when humans didn't even appear on Earth, when life was still more abundant in the oceans, the ancestors of modern-day frogs undertook one of the most challenging evolutionary journeys, which was life transitioning from water to the land. So frogs, therefore, symbolize the evolution of life from water to the land. They've witnessed millions of years of evolution. They've owned this earth much longer than us humans. And so I think that they are a true example of nature conservation, of some of the jewels that we've got from evolution. Yet many of us ask, why frogs? Why should we care? Instead, I ask, what is it that we contribute? What is the use of our species? What is it that we give back to the vast resources of nature that we only consume? We put our fellow beings on the brink of extinction. We are destroying frog habitats to the extent that amphibians have become the most threatened group of vertebrates on Earth. 1/3 of every known amphibian species, not just worldwide but also in India, is facing extinction threats. Nearly half of all known populations are declining. Over 50% of species are still data deficient, so they don't even qualify for reliable conservation assessments. We still don't have the full list of species that exist, those that could be potentially threatened. So basically, our documentation is still far from being complete. And the work that is remaining to be done is tremendous. But I believe there is hope. Because in a way, this is also a wonderful time in the history of nature and wildlife conservation, because more and more people are now aware of the biodiversity crisis. Young children to adults from various walks of life are actually talking and involving in conservation. Young children are talking about conservation, but we need to do more. There's a greater need to convey the importance of species documentation, because after all, the very basis of conservation is science. Unless we understand what we have, we cannot know what to conserve and where to conserve. Without proper identification of species and their exact distribution ranges, as well as habitat requirements, any conservation efforts would stand futile. So we need scientists. We need them to gather scientific evidence for making conservation prioritization a meaningful effort. We also need teachers who inspire young children to take up biodiversity studies and pursue conservation science. We also need to salute families who encourage their children to enter the field of biodiversity research and dedicate their life to such fields. They are the reason we are able to take up all the challenges, because they stand with us and they also celebrate little moments of success. At the same time, and most importantly, we need to acknowledge those who work tirelessly to create new paths for younger generations to follow. I represent an entire generation of young wildlife researchers who were fortunate to have a solid foundation. We are able to expedite species documentation and accelerate conservation efforts because of the work of our mentors and visionaries. For the last nearly 20 years, Indian herpetological research has transformed dramatically, particularly after path-breaking discoveries such as that of the Indian purple frog, or Nasica batrachus, way back in 2003. Species such as Nasica batrachus became iconic, and they gave a global face to Indian frogs as well as their conservation concerns. During the last decade, frogs have also become one of the most actively researched subjects in India. And there are also wonderful signs that the common people, wildlife lovers, are actually increasing and following frogs. It is my most serendipitous blessing that I was mentored in the lab of Professor S.D. Biju, University of Delhi, which has played an instrumental role in revolutionizing the concept of herpetology and systematics in India. I am only fortunate to take this work forward along with fellow researchers and my colleagues. When I started my research, women field biologists were still rare, especially those working on small and nocturnal animals like frog. Apart from the many challenges of field-based research, it is not often easy to convince people about your work, because smaller neglected animals are considered even more insignificant in front of tigers, elephants, or those celebrated alike. As a woman, it also becomes increasingly difficult to gain acceptance by locals, tribal peoples, park managers, even police officials, When you need to work in deep jungles, starting your work only after sunset, working all through the night and quite often until sunrise. But it's been a gradual process. And what has been most fulfilling in this entire process is being able to communicate to people the importance of frogs. It's been a journey I never imagined it would be when I began. From the first green casket frog that I photographed in the Himalayas way back in 2009, to the newly discovered mysterious microhylid genus that we discovered in the Western Ghats, frogs have been endlessly fascinating for me. Personally, they got me close to nature, and they have nurtured me in ways beyond the human world. BNHS is playing a very important role in inspiring young researchers like me. In 2009, when I was just a young researcher, still trying to explore the wild, I had an opportunity to join on a brief course with them, a brief course on marine biodiversity at Lakshadweep. It was one of the first field exposures that I had, and somewhere it triggered my interest or decision to later take up biodiversity research. So thank you. I'm overwhelmed to actually receive this recognition from an organization that I look up to. As a field biologist and wildlife explorer, I try to understand the present. And as an evolutionary biologist, I also try to infer the past, the historical past. Because I believe if we can understand the evolutionary processes that have resulted in the rich biological heritage we've inherited, we would be able to better appreciate, respect, and value the importance of conserving it for the future. We need to look no further for inspiration because India is a global biodiversity hotspot. The Western Ghats in particular are an amphibian hotspot, and over 90% of frog species in this region are found nowhere else in the world. Geologically also, the Indian landmass has played a very important role in the origin, diversification, and dispersal of frogs. We can boast of endemic families, species, genera that even survived the massive Deccan Trap volcanism that took place right here where we are standing. So then, I think frogs can very well be our wildlife heroes. They can very well take the center stage in the Indian conservation scenario, along with tigers, elephants, lions, and rhinos. And they can be the one that can lead the way forward for other smaller forms of life. Our generation must come together and work. We cannot afford to believe what we have done is enough. There is a lot of work remaining to be done. We must engage more in scientific research and documentation of every form of life. My constitution is just a small group of animals, frogs. So I dream that when our coming generations come, and when they celebrate, when they appreciate nature, they also celebrate our shared ancient origins with frogs. They celebrate their heroic tales. I don't want that the coming generations forget the mesmerizing colors of frogs, or all their monsoon dramas and their rituals, or the frog calls coming from a nearby wetland or our forest lands. This is my dream, and I'm convinced that this is yours too. Thank you, BNHS, and thank you, all of you, for giving me another reason today to believe more in our dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonali, for enlightening us about the beauty of the amphibian world. Thank you very much. Well, next, Mr. Anand Pandey has completed his PhD in an Antarctic vertebrate species, snow petrel, a climate-dependent seabird, and thereby glorified India by contributing such a research for the first time in the country. Deep blue oceans are like home to Mr. Pandey, who has worked on some of the beautiful creations ranging from zooplankton, dugongs, seabirds, and whales. I hope we are ready with our oxygen cylinders and fins because we are going to take a quick dive into the world of Mr. Anand Pandey. Can we have the movie, please?
We are always either fascinated or surprised by the oceans. Deep blues have always attracted people since eras. Curiosity about seas, marine world, colorful fishes, corals, shells will remain forever for us. Less known facts about marine world continued as a road less traveled for laymen. So many secrets are still hidden in the abyss of deep blues. Rare are the people who take it to depth of the ocean to come out with the rare pearls. Anand Pandey is one of the deep divers who have factually dedicated his life for marine world and marine biology. Anand completed his masters in oceanography as specialization and have submitted PhD in wildlife science. Initially, he started working as a project assistant at National Institute of Oceanography and was also selected as a student participant in Indian Antarctic expedition. In his doctoral research, Anand beheld the nesting ecology and population genetics of snow petrel, a climate-dependent Antarctic seabird. It was first PhD from India on any Antarctic vertebrate species. He is active in the field of wildlife conservation since a decade, associated with premier research institutes such as National Institute of Oceanography, National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, and Wildlife Institute of India. As a trained biologist, Anand has been involved in national research programs including Indian scientific expeditions to Antarctica, All India Tiger Estimation Exercise, Cheetah Reintroduction Survey and National Dugong Recovery Program, and many more in biodiversity conservation. He has been involved in preparation of the 5th National Report of Convention in Biological Diversity, as well as revision of the National Biodiversity Action Plan. He has contributed to peer-reviewed 15 scientific papers, 3 book chapters, 7 technical reports, and popular articles. Anand has been awarded with several academic research awards and grants, including Scientific Committee of Antarctic Research, Grant for Capacity Building, Education and Training, Association of Polar Early Career Researchers Education and Outreach Grant, International Association of Cryospheric Sciences Travel Grant, Ravi Sankaran Fellowship for Field Biology, Ecology and Conservation, and Dakshina Fellowship of University of Mumbai.
For the last time, I request Mr. Homi Khusro Khan to please come on the dais. And the J.C. Daniel Conservation Leader Award for the first time to the Young Men category 2019 goes to Mr. Anand Pandey. Anand Pandey has been active in the field of wildlife conservation for the last 10 years. A keen naturalist, avid bird watcher, wildlife photographer, mountaineer, and conservation educator. His primary research interests are marine top predator ecology and conservation, seabird ecology, polar ecology, climate change, marine protected area management, and conservation education and outreach. He has been associated with premier research institutes such as the National Institute of Oceanography, National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, and Wildlife Institute of India. His doctoral research on the nesting ecology and population genetics of the snow petrel, a climate-dependent Antarctic seabird, gained him the first PhD from India on an Antarctic vertebrate species. A trained biologist, he has worked on fauna ranging from zooplankton, seabirds, tigers, dugongs to whales. He has been involved in national research programs, including Indian scientific expeditions to Antarctica, All India Tiger Estimation Exercise, Cheetah Reintroduction Survey, and National Dugong Recovery Program, besides preparation of the 5th National Report to the Convention on Biological Diversity and revision of the National Biodiversity Action Plan. A recipient of numerous prestigious national and international research grants, he has to his credit several scientific papers, technical reports, and popular articles. He has supervised 2 postgraduate dissertations in MSc Environment Management at Forest Research Institute and 5 internships in ecology, molecular genetics, and marine biology. The J.C. Daniel Conservation Leader Award for Young Men for 2019 is awarded to Anand Pandey to recognize his achievements as a naturalist. We hope that his unwavering commitment and zeal for conservation will inspire a generation of young researchers and ecologists. Without further ado, I invite you to please speak a few words on the dais. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon to all. I did prepare a speech, but I forgot everything now. So I'll be speaking mostly impromptu. First of all, I would like to say that thank you, and this is actually a humbling moment for me. It is really overwhelming to say a few words, but I'd like to definitely give my thanks to all those who have touched upon my life and through whom I have learned whatever skills I have right now, and through whom I have been inspired throughout my life, and I hope that I would be inspired for the rest of my life by them. One of the persons I would like to begin with the fact that I belong to a family which is very conservative, and like most of the conservative North Indian families, they expect their kids to become a doctor or an engineer, or if not doctor and engineer, then probably an IAS officer. So when I joined graduation, it was in the beautiful western coast town of Ratnagiri in Maharashtra, and when I joined graduation, I was actually preparing to become an IAS officer. I started my work, I started reading to become an IAS officer, a bureaucrat. But there is one guy here I would like to mention, Vishal Bhave, and he was instrumental, actually. Vishal was instrumental in me to leave my books of civils to prepare for civil services exam, and he forced me to come with him to the beaches of Ratnagiri, which are beautiful beaches. And we actually, I think we scoured almost all of the Ratnagiri beaches, and we were looking for basically molluscan shells to identify them, and that was the first exposure for me in the field of natural history. So I was not at all interested, like I did not know the difference between a sparrow and a yellow-throated sparrow and a normal sparrow, house sparrow. When I joined with Vishal and some of our friends, and started my journey towards this the field of biodiversity research and wildlife conservation. That was the first exposure. After that, I joined masters in Mumbai University, and I studied in Mumbai for my masters in zoology with specialization in oceanography. And I came. I was studying at the Institute of Science, which is just across the street of this wonderful building of Bombay Natural History Society. And I remember walking across the street and meeting Dr. Deepak Apte and discussing with him and volunteering options and internship options, and also meeting and also listening to Varad, I remember once at the BNHS, and also interacting with several researchers in BNHS, and that was actually that was where I started my journey towards wildlife conservation research. And I think we all, youngsters, we all owe a great debt to this wonderful organization, Bombay Natural History Society. And I think it deserves a great round of applause for that, because Bombay Natural History Society has actually shown the path to many youngsters like me. And thank you, sir, and thank you for guiding us and inspiring us to do whatever we are doing in a small manner. My PhD, I would like to mention Dr. B.G. Kulkarni at the Institute of Science. He I was interested, after my master's, I was interested to apply for Antarctic expedition, and I went up to him and I said, sir, there is an application coming up. The deadline is just 3 days left for that deadline. And I asked him if I could apply for that particular expedition, and he said, yeah, you go ahead. But I said, sir, what do I work for? I have no idea what to do in Antarctica. So he said, okay, if you are really interested, if you are really want to do something in Antarctica, Antarctica in this world as a continent is known for effects of or impacts of climate change. The best visible impacts are in Antarctic or in the Arctic. So he said, you look at species which are keystone species. So I drafted a proposal to work on Antarctic krill, which is the keystone species of the Antarctic ecosystem. And I went with a proposal to him, and he was on leave that day. I remember it was a Sunday, and he said that, okay, you come to my home and I'll just go through the proposal and check it. And we sat through the night. I remember 3 o'clock at night, I left his house and went back. And the next morning, I caught the train to Goa to submit my proposal. And it was the first exposure for me to Antarctica. I went as a student participant, as a student member in the 28th Indian Scientific Expedition to Antarctica, and where I met some of the very brilliant scientists who still guide me from time to time. One of the students of Dr. Madhav Gadgil himself, Dr. Sanjeev Naika, he was there with me, sir, in the expedition, and I remember him. He was the one who actually took me along on his lichen survey trips, and it was like the stepping stone for me to learn about all sorts of not only the Antarctic krill but also other biodiversity which is there in Antarctica. After that, I had the privilege of joining the Wildlife Institute of India, one of the premier research organizations in the country, and also working with some of the leading scientists, Dr. Y.V. Jhala and Professor Kamar Qureshi, who were like mentors to me, who are still mentors to me, and I still meet them in the corridor with shaky legs. But they were the ones who told me how to go about scientific research, how to draft questions, how to look at things critically, and they still criticize my work, but that's a different thing. But they are the ones who actually told me how to go about scientific research, and because of them, I think I'm standing here. And another people that I would like to mention is Dr. V.B. Mathur, the ex-director of Wildlife Institute of India, and Dr. Shiv Kumar and Dr. Samrat Mandal, and also Dr. Satya Kumar. These are the people in the WII who actually have propelled me, who have actually given me the fire under my wings, I could say, if I could say. They have given me that urge to still work for the conservation of wildlife in the country. I would also like to say that doing a PhD in Antarctica, I don't think, I think there are many more researchers in the country who would like to do work in Antarctica, who would like to go to Antarctica and study the seabirds and the charismatic marine mammal seals over there. But I think my work could have inspired a few more people, probably at the undergraduate level and probably at the postgraduate level, who would take up this kind of research in the future. And I hope that my work would inspire many more minds in the coming future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anand, for this lovely trip to Planet Ocean. Well, the awards are given, and now BNHS wishes all the best to all the awardees. For the last time, can we hear a big round of applause for the Salim Ali Award for Nature Conservation and the J.C. Daniel Award for... I would now like to request our president, I hope you're not tired, to speak few words on this lovely occasion.
This tool, no? Friends, I'm delighted to be with you on this occasion. This is probably my third Salim Ali Awards function. It's held once every 2 years. And whenever I meet the prize winners and the awardees, I'm almost humbled by their achievements, the wonderful things they've done over their lives. They've dedicated their lives to something which was near and dear to their hearts. And sometimes I look back on my own youth and challenge, was it a misspent youth? Should I have done something more like this? But I suppose life takes you where it's supposed to take you. I think both the stalwarts, Salim Ali and JC Daniels, were great people. I unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to meet Salim Ali. I've heard so much about him, read so much about him. And he was an absolute legend in his time, and for many more years to come, people will look after him. JC Daniels, I got a chance to meet and work with. He was passionate. On everything he did, he was passionate. He was emotional, highly, highly emotional, and just a wonderful human being. So I'm grateful that the BNHS kept this tradition of giving awards and added the new award in honor of JC Daniels. And he'd be delighted and be looking down at us and smiling probably to see youngsters treading the path he took many years ago and doing so well at whatever they've done. I think today we're on a slippery slope as a planet. People who live my generation has done very, very little for thinking about the future of the planet. And I hope the youngsters, the younger generation, new generation, will take a far greater ownership and a lot more action than we guys did in our time. I almost feel guilty when I think back of our lives. That, we've just taken things for granted. We've enjoyed all the wonderful things happening around us, but we haven't really thought about the future and what we leave behind for our children. And as an old corporate animal, I'm sort of now beginning to see, for the first time, it's very gratifying, I see that sustainability is coming on the corporate agenda. I find a lot of companies today, I retired about 10 years ago from active executive life, but today I find when I visit corporate forums, seminars, meetings, sustainability and the environment has become very much part of company objectives. It's part of strategy, it's part of people's thinking going forward. And that's a very gratifying change I see happening. And I do hope that, as we said during this conference, finally the result's going to come from a lot of people working in partnership, working together. And if corporates also can do their little bit in this part, I think it'd be a very good thing. So thank you very much, all of you, for being with us for this whole week. I think it's a wonderful week. I've been here the first couple of days and I came back today for the final session. I wish I could have been there right through the week, but I will pick up the seminar papers from Deepak and read them later. Thank you very much for being with us, being part of this lovely celebration, I would say. Celebration for hopefully what lies ahead and a better future which we can build for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those lovely words. Next, I invite the lady, Ms. Patricia Sarita, to please share a few words today.
What an event, and what a wind world of inspiration. Of all of you, I had the pleasure of meeting Alex when I worked back in the days when I started my life in Conservation International and I was working in the Andes program. Alex, you were leading the Liberia program. All of what we have seen today is just that incredible passion that all of you have for our home, whether it is the little frogs or the Arctic and the complete unknown, or protecting your home, whether it is in the Western Ghats or in Liberia, and engaging with your communities and with your people and your young fellows to make sure that they exchange guns for cameras. It's been an extraordinary inspiration to just hear all of the fantastic work that you have done historically, but that you continue to do. And an incredible example, not only to all of us who love conservation, but particularly to the outside world, who doesn't quite understand that we really need to protect our planet because, as you said the first day, homie, we are in auto-destruction mode. I can only say now that I am more committed, more inspired, more energized by all of your fantastic example. And I would like to make sure that we make this public, way beyond India, and that we use the BirdLife Partnership for that, because you are an example not only to your people in India, but to the world. And we are extremely proud to having you here. Thanks so much for letting me be part of this. Thanks so much for inspiring us all, and thanks so much for leading the pack. We need more people like you so we can actually protect our home. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Next, I would like to invite the living example of get lost in nature and you'll find yourself, none other than Dr. Deepak Apte. Please give the vote of thanks.
Actually, I have done that an hour before. So I'm not going to again, read out the whole thing. I think, thank you very much, for all this very generous support we have. There are two things I want to say as part of my very generous acknowledgement. And firstly, to the parents of Sonali, that giving that freedom, that this child deserves. It wouldn't have been possible to have this gem without the support of, you to this great scientist, budding scientist of this country. And thank you very much for giving us that jewel. And especially it's important for the parents of the girl child, because we still have that dogma, of that, oh, you can't do this. And being a father of a daughter, there's nothing pleasurous than seeing, child like Sonali excelling. Anand, you wouldn't have succeeded without Gattu Gitanjali behind you. So don't ever forget that, that all your success, is for Gattu. Thank you, Gattu. She's been my student, before marrying to Anand, for being there for Anand and let him fly. That applies to my wife also, who's sitting behind and looking with that wacky eyes that, oh, you never said that for 30 years for me. Now I think you'll realize that we just celebrated 30 years of our marriage, and I was here, unfortunately, not there at home for you. There are two generations we looked upon. One is, we learn from generation of Alexander and Madhav Gadgil, who inspired us to look at conservation in a very different context and perspective. And the challenge we have in Bombay Naturalistic Society is we have a mix of people within our body. There are some who are, who follow the path of activism. There are few who follow path of pure research. And BNHS is both. The only difference is that we believe activism should be based on very sound science. That's what differentiates BNHS among all other organizations today that we have. And it's a huge challenge to, continue that legacy of, Salim Ali, J.C. Daniel, and continue that legacy of, science and conservation without compromising the values and ethics, what BNHS stands for. So it's been a great challenge, for me personally. And I think all of you are part of that journey to make this happen very effectively. I'm very glad to see, this young generation. Actually, we stand nowhere because we celebrate seniors and we celebrate juniors. Ours is a generation, we don't know where we stand. And that's something, always wonder me, what the hell I'm doing here? I should be either young or old, to be celebrated. But nonetheless, I think we have fantastic young generation coming up, in this field of conservation biology. And Sonali and Anand, you really are, and our friends from Nagaland, you are real example of what youth can make difference in today's very complicated world of conservation. Conservation today is not about, loss of forest or loss of species. It's all about very meshed up, complex of economy, ecology, social aspect, political aspect. You can no longer isolate, these aspects. And unless you have marriage of all these pillars, conservation, you're dealing in a very, very difficult times. So we look upon you, for more and more young generation to come forward. BN is a platform. Use it. You know, it's an institution which will allow anybody who loves nature, BNHS will embrace you with open arm. I'm an example of that. I became member of BNHS way back in 1980 when I was doing my 10th standard. And I'm with BNHS since then. And this is the only institution which actually, you know, fueled the passion for nature that, you know, we have. Marine conservation was never on the agenda of BNHS when I came in. But it never turned me back. And I think that's a model we want institution to embrace, that every single component of nature is important. So getting Sonali Award for frogs or Anand getting for Antarctic is nothing unusual. That's what BNHS actually try to promote in terms of conservation. Thank you very much. I think you are an extremely lovely audience. And we have lunch, you know, after this. So don't leave without having a lunch with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And with that gratitude being expressed, we now come to the end of the award ceremony. Thank you for your participation here, ladies and gentlemen. I hope it has been a fulfilling day for all of you. Lunch has been arranged outside, just outside chambers and not in the cafeteria today. Please do make a note of it. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Goodbye. I please request the awardees